this episode. I guess my inability to deal with it, to step up and actually say what I feel like. If I actually don't feel like talking to somebody, if we are in the same room, it's almost like, that awkward silence, and I quite often find myself trying to interact with that person even though I don't really feel like it. In a combat situation, it felt like having sex, honestly. It was crazy.
Energetic exchange.
Good evening, dear listeners. Day 3 of Consistency Self Podcast. Here we discuss important things about being a human and being more than just a human. Today was my first day practicing jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and my throat hurts because I've been choked numerous times. They've been merciless on my neck. I was trying to tell them that it hurts, but they said it's normal. It really feels not so normal. So, what did I learn today? I spent most of the day working on this song, and after hours and hours and hours of trial and error, and actually after months now of trying to finish this song, I realized that it's such a mess that I've created. I've built, 70 tracks superimposed on each other, and everything started from a very spontaneous... I created this song in a night, but then it wasn't perfect, so I started tweaking little things and adding little things, and every single time I would change something, it felt like I'm getting further and further away from what the original song was, to the point where I replaced almost everything, so it became a different song. But then something was missing, and it wasn't, some things weren't working, so I was editing and over and over again. And today I feel like I had a breakdown, because I went for a walk and I listened to the latest 2 versions of what I've edited, and I felt initially they sound so bad. The mind is never happy with how the sounds like. After a while, somehow I relaxed, going for a walk. It was a beautiful day, it was sunny, and somehow the last song started to feel better somehow. It wasn't as punchy, in bass as the previous ones, but it felt more natural somehow. I wasn't trying to impress anybody. And then when I had this realization, I went back and realized, oh my god, all the other sounds were so punchy, so the drums and the bass were you can't understand anything anymore. Hopefully by the time I will upload this podcast, the song will be ready. I really hope so. Today in the morning I asked the Gene Keys. I opened the book randomly and I asked what's important for me today to learn, and it was Gene Key number 23, that is all about simplicity, and its repressed version is repression, basically. Not able to express what you actually feel and think, because when you are little, you are told off whenever you want to say your truth, and then you learn to lie and not really say what you actually mean. And I realized that I've been struggling with this my entire life. There is some authenticity pattern that I am struggling with, that somehow in a social context, because I see other people using masks as well, I don't feel comfortable entering a conversation or interaction with somebody who uses these sort of masks. And I guess it's because it triggers my own masks, and it triggers some form of a reflection of what I have inside of myself too. And I guess my inability to deal with it, to step up and actually say what I feel like. If I actually don't feel like talking to somebody, If we are in the same room, it's almost like, that awkward silence, and I quite often find myself trying to interact with that person even though I don't really feel like it. And that can create some form of tension in my body, I observed. And this also comes from this idea of, I'm not a boring person. I don't want to be this guy who is just quiet and reserved and suppressed. Yeah. Today's been very hard to show up because it's quite late and my throat hurts and it's past midnight already, and I've been still editing this song, and now I'm gonna slowly go to bed and listen to what I've created. It's my daily ritual where I edit most of the day, and then at the end of the day I just listen to what I've created. Usually there is a satisfaction, but I wasn't aligned with a state of mind that has silence as background. My mind was very noisy, and now my mind was busy and unable to process sounds because I didn't take the time that I needed to, relax and stay in silence. There is this urge to finish the song, which is right now some form of impatience, the impatience to finish the song. So when I work from this space, from this place, nothing really works very well. And the thing is, I can't do anything else until that song is finished. I feel like stuck in this loop where I don't feel passion for anything else but to finish this song. So I guess it's important to understand that in these moments, the only way to get out of this loop is to, make that effort and remove myself from the situation and sit on the floor or in a comfortable armchair and just sit in silence and just feel my body. But then obviously I have to deal with the impatience feeling. I have to deal with, I'm wasting my time right now, I should be doing work. And yeah, I wonder if you resonate with this, because this impatience is in all of us in one way or another. We're sometimes impatient to go home from work, or we're impatient to go to work, or we're impatient for the holiday to come. We're impatient to see somebody. And this thing creates tension in our bodies. And coming back to Jiu-Jitsu, at the end of the session, I felt so exhausted. Actually, when we had the last fight, let's call it, I could barely stand. I could barely move my hands, and my opponent was somebody who was quite advanced, and he wasn't talking, and he was just doing nothing as well. He was kind of looking at my body and waiting for me to just give him some form of cue that I'm vulnerable or something. And I felt like I couldn't communicate to him and tell him that I couldn't communicate my needs. I didn't know what to tell him because I didn't know what Jiu-Jitsu is really. So actually what I learned today through Jiu-Jitsu was that every single time you learn something new, it will feel overwhelming. You don't know anything about it. Everything is foreign language, so to speak. So the purpose of Jiu-Jitsu is to put your opponent in a situation where they don't have an escape. Usually you choke your opponent to the point where your opponent feels strangled, or you have his hand, for example, in a twisted position so that you have absolute control over his pain. Yeah, I was choked a couple of times and I couldn't yield. I couldn't speak and I couldn't tap. My hands were blocked, so I could not communicate that
I'm choking
there. So I end up being a little bit injured. And yeah, another thing that I realized was that I don't know much about combat, and that you can learn how to defend yourself, and that is very important, especially as a man, and there is an actual war going on our planet. If this thing would escalate and there will be like a survival sort of situation on this planet, sometimes you might have somebody come to you and rob you, and if you don't know to defend yourself, you're going to feel the weak link. And it's very interesting how after you practice a little bit, you start to become a little bit more confident. I could feel that I'm learning something very important, and I felt very, very grateful that I started doing it, because this is the kind of thing that is completely out of my
realm.
So because I visited this friend, he invited me to this jiu-jitsu class, and I feel very grateful because it's one of those things that I wouldn't take initiative. So I'm grateful that I could do it. And I've seen women there too, and I think, just knowing how to defend yourself, it has nothing to do with your sex, because it's very important, regardless, to know how to put your opponent in a situation where they have to yield. And in this way, you will feel safe. Because it's not about, you going and attacking somebody. It's about defensive strategies that are important. If you listen right now and you don't know how to combat another human, I highly recommend this, because once you start understanding how little you know about your body, basically your body limits. So when you practice jiu-jitsu, what happens is your mind will be in a state of confusion, because you're like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't know what to do. Obviously, jiu-jitsu has particular techniques, and these techniques are based on particular positions of the body where you have your opponent either choked or in a situation where they have to yield. And that is your winning. And if you don't know these positions, you don't know how to get there. You have no focus. So one of the most important things that I've learned today was never give your back to your opponent. So for example, if somebody comes to you, turning your back as a defense mechanism towards your opponent is like a big mistake. And interestingly enough, I realized that my instinct is to turn my back towards my opponent. And I kept on doing that, and I realized, oh my God, I did it again. And I didn't want to do that. I was aware that that's not smart, because once your opponent has your back, it has control over your neck, it has control over your head, over your legs, because you can't see him. So he has like this full control, and you can't turn around, right? So imagine that he grabs you from the back. Another realization is that at some point we were like on the floor, and we were in a missionary position, honestly, and it felt so intimate being so close to another human in a combat situation. It felt like having sex, honestly. It was really energetic.
Exchange.
A different form, of course, but I feel like there's definitely a connection between the two. And, in a fight, there is definitely this sort of energetic exchange. So ask yourself, what would be something that you can try tomorrow that would have the potential to rock your world, something that you don't know nothing about, something very, very out of your control. Because this is the interesting thing, when I was there, I felt so vulnerable because I know nothing about this thing. And I had to deal with all those insecurities. What if I'm gonna, embarrass myself or whatever, blah, 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 whatever the mind is trying to say. Now imagine if you start climbing or dancing. That could be quite terrifying for a lot of us, because, dancing is again very, very intimate. And it's just like a person who cannot dance is like, it kind of says something, right? Somebody who is not in touch with their body so much that they're learning how to dance. And I honestly feel like dancing is not something you learn. I think dancing is something you unlearn, because we are born dancers and we're always in a state of flow, and all it takes is just to listen and allow the body to move. But we became so entrenched in and entranced in our mind that we forgot that our body has its own life and its own movement, and all we have to do is let it connect with the rhythm. But of course there are different kind of dances, and some dances have rules, and there are particular kind of moves, and I'm not fond of these sort of dance methods, because you have to use your rational mind to control your movements, but there is definitely value in it, and it will definitely make you go out of your comfort zone. And once you master this sort of control over your body, you're going to feel super, super confident as well. because you realize that what you did was you started to connect with your body through your mind, and that has value too. When you are giving instructions like, hey, I want to move like this, and like this, and then you're trying to do that thing and it doesn't happen because there is no mind-body coordination. So you keep on practicing, and at some point it will be automatic. And that's the definition of any skill that you want to learn. That's how you learn anything. You at first probably suck at it, and then gradually become better and better until it becomes automatic. Just imagine for a second that you know exactly who you are, and you know that you are loved and that you are loved, and you accept yourself as a human exactly as you are, no matter what, unconditionally. That you wake up in the morning and you feel so happy that you are you, and it doesn't matter whether you're gonna succeed or fail, or if you're gonna have a shitty day or not. You're gonna love yourself, and you're gonna enjoy the ride. You're gonna look at your life, and you're gonna cherish every single moment. And especially in those miserable times when nothing seems to work and you feel exhausted maybe, or you feel you had enough, those moments when you're like, oh, but I remember who I am, and then you look at yourself and you give yourself a hug, especially if there is nobody else to give you a hug. Yeah, this is all possible. And not only that it's possible, it's our right. It's our right to feel enough. But when we are born on this planet, we slowly become domesticated. And it's nobody's fault. It's just how the game works. We become domesticated with lies, with the idea that we're not enough, that we're a good boy or a good girl or a bad girl or a bad, you get it. And the moment we start to believe that we can be a bad person, that's when the lie starts to creep in and live a life of lies. And we're going to attract the people that will confirm that we are not good, that we are not worthy of love. And the whole world will conspire to prove that to ourselves because we believe that. Of course, we can learn how to transcend these beliefs and change them and let go of the ones that keep us stuck into a world of misery. This reminds me that next week I am going to participate in this beautiful workshop called Enlightenment Intensive. It's a taster for something that normally takes 3 days. And it's all about dyads coming together, a couple, asking each other the same question, who are you? And, each and everyone would answer for about 5 minutes, and then they would switch. And in this time, you are free to speak everything you want about who you think you are. And then the other person has to listen without any sort of reaction. Regardless of what you're saying, they're just going to look at you and listen actively without giving any sort of facial expression. Allegedly, once you go through this process, at some point, you will have a glimpse of who you really are. And, if you are lucky, so to speak, you will remember who you really are, and then understand that all your life had purpose and will always have purpose, and the purpose is in this moment right now, and it will never go away, and you are okay, and you are enough in every single moment, no matter how much you think that you failed in your life. I want to say thank you to the people who invited me, Damien and Rachel, because they can see something. They can see that I really need this. I live in a paradox because on one hand, I'm okay, I'm enough, I love myself for exactly who I am. But on the other hand, there is a part of me that is not yet awake. There is a part of me that is, a shadow, and it's a beautiful shadow. And I cherish this shadow. But obviously, just like any shadow, I'm curious to know how the light is. So they really felt, I guess, or maybe I'm projecting, they know that I have this desire to wake up, so to speak, to who I really am completely, not just with half an eye, because I had glimpses into who I really am many, many times in this life. But always I seem to end up in a place of drama again, because there is a journey for me, and I embrace this wholeheartedly. And no matter how hard life is for me, so to speak, hard, I will always be okay. And that's something that I feel so grateful that I can believe it with all my heart, that I can find joy in suffering, and that I can find joy in every single moment, because I understand that it's purposeful. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop here, and I wish you good night, or a very bright, beautiful day. And if it's rainy, just enjoy relaxation, and remember that you are enough, and remember that you can always find something in your life in any day that will rock your world and will shift your perspective, because this is exactly what happened to me today. After practicing jiu-jitsu, I realized that, wow, I lived in a bubble for so many days, and I was only doing a few things, and doing this was like climbing a mountain and being on top of the world for 2 or 3 hours. I wonder if you can learn something that is truly useful for you and purposeful for you, that will give so much more value to your life. I wonder what that is. Sending you much love from Highland Visions. Highland Visions.